Shabbat Shalom. In the entertainment business, Jews are known much more for comedy than they are for sleight of hand magic work, although there have been a couple of very famous Jewish magicians. And in fact, Judaism has perpetrated upon itself one of the greatest magic tricks of all times. And you probably didn't even notice it happen. I mean, it happened 1,500 years ago, but even still, with everything that we have just been reading for the past months with regarding the Mishkan, for everything we read in the Haftarah, often in parallel to these times, no one seems to have noticed the amazing, magical, disappearing act. Not the ark, of the people. The Kohanim and the kings. Where are they? I know, Bob, you're going to stand up in the back and Harry here in the front and say, wait a minute, I'm a Kohen. Yeah, you're a Kohen. And look how far they've come. Just for a moment, work with me on what was the Kohen in the ancient world. What was, not even the Kohen Gadol, but just even your regular run-of-the-mill Kohen. What was he for the ancient world? A butcher. The smallest part of his job was knowing how to properly slaughter and prepare the sacrifices, indeed. But what was that job then? Was it just your every day, run-of-the-mill butcher down the street because you wanted to have lunch? For the sacrifices, for the literal heart of the soul of the nation. They were standing there, and how they stood in all of their glory. Think about everything we've read about how they were dressed, the beautiful robes that were worn. Even if you weren't the Kohen Gadol, you still got a nice outfit if you were a Kohen, and it was something so special it could only be worn when you were officiating. And all of this was done with a pomp, with the circumstances, with the horns being blown by the Levi'im, the songs filling the Mishkan, and then later the temple courtyards. It could not have been more impressive and more amazing. Where are they? Yes, we still have some honorary roles for Kohanim. First dibs for an aliyah. Pidyon haben for the occasional time when a firstborn child needs the redemption. Birkat Kohanim, the blessing of the Kohanim on special occasions, or every day if you live in Israel, but still it takes all of about 5 or 10 minutes. And we even cover their faces while they're doing it. We refer to them for all sorts of things when we talk about the division of the Jewish people, like the 3 matzahs, although there's a longer story behind that. That's it. How many people want the Kohanim back now, at the temple, performing the sacrifices? We talk about it enough in the Musaf service that we are about to recite after this little spiel. We're going to talk about the restoration of the services. We'll talk about the sacrifices again, unless you skip that page and use the alternative text. In our daily brachot, we talk about the restoration of the Kohanim and of the temple sacrifices. In Ritzei, every single Amidah, we also hint at the restoration of the service of Jerusalem. But that's the magic trick. We talk about it, but no one actually really wants it. No one really wants it. We have gotten rid of the Kohanim, no offense, gentlemen, thanks to the destruction by the Romans and their continual war against us and preventing the restoration of the temple. But the idea of the Kohanim has become more powerful for us than the actual Kohanim ever were. And we like it like that. We like it like that. And so too for our kings. How many people here are aching for a king? I'm not seeing a lot of hands, just to make sure everybody who's online understands that. No one is saying, give me a king, a son of David. But what if I were to say, how about Mashiach? Someone to come to bring peace to the world, to lead the entire nation and everyone towards a better understanding of God, to allow harmony to reign as it was always intended? Sure, we can get on board with that. I'm seeing some nodding heads. But traditionally that role was played by a king. To become Mashiach was to be the king of the Davidic dynasty. And indeed, we talk about Semach David, we talk about this offshoot of David in our brachot. We talk about a restoration of monarchy as being fundamental to the Messianic age. But notice the switcheroo that just happened. I didn't say we wanted a king from David tomorrow. I said I wanted Mashiach tomorrow. And if it ain't Mashiach, I don't want a Davidic king. None of us are aching just to have a king. We're fine going along with the kingship of a descendant of David if it happens to be the Messiah. But any lesser version, and we'll be quite happy with our democracy, thank you very much. That is not automatic. That is a sleight of hand thanks to Rabbinic Judaism looking back at our history and saying, you know what? Most of our kings were absolute rubbish. And maybe we shouldn't be aching for more of them because right now we seem to be doing better off without them than with them. So yes, when Messiah comes, of course, it'll all work out. But in the meantime, we are not accepting applications from people who can prove their genealogy goes back to King David, and we are not seeking to restore them as a monarch to our nation. This was a big question when Israel was being founded, from among those who were more of traditional bent of whether or not it should be a monarchy. And everyone said, shut up. No, no, it's not going to be a monarchy. Get out of here. And even those who were among the more extremists along the religious spectrum said, sure, it can be a monarchy if you can prove that it's Mashiach. And if it's not Mashiach, we shouldn't be doing any of the Zionism thing anyway. No one from either side was really keen on just grabbing any Tom, Dick, or Harry that happened to be from the Davidic line. No one was looking for that. But the funny thing is, for both king and priest, as much as we have decided we are better off without them in their official capacities and their official roles, as much as we've said we don't want the Reish Galuta, the head of the diaspora, as was attempted in the Babylonian communities and then eventually disappeared, we did a magic trick to make sure it was still there. But in a way that was so revolutionary, a way that was so counterculture to where we had come, in a way that was so subversive that you didn't even notice the sleight of hand. Should I show you your priest? Should I show you your king? Why are you rising? Why aren't you? You stand in the presence of your king? I am deadly serious. The reason you stand for the Torah when the ark is opened is the same reason that you would stand for a king. Because that is what we are taught to do in the presence of that which deserves our honor. I'll close it so you can sit down, but hopefully you got a good look. Because there are other elements to the Torah that clearly indicate the sleight of hand substitution. The removal of the Kohanim and the kings and the replacement with the Torah. Look at how I'm dressed and look at how the Torah is dressed. Which one of us are better dressed? The Torah. It's okay. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Right? You're not going to hurt my feelings. I'm not wearing giant silver crowns. Right? I'm not wearing a beautiful multicolored coat, and even if I did, it would probably be considered a little gaudy and tacky. You can get me some bells, but I don't think I can pull it off. Now, there was an attempt in different communities to try and dress up the clergy in more resplendent robes and with fancy hats and other such things. And by and large, meh, it fell flat. That high church imitation that came during the Enlightenment period when we began to ape the behavior of some of the people around us, no, it didn't work out so well. Even among the Sephardim that were not trying to imitate the Christians in their worship, when they tried to imitate some of the Muslim turbanish and roby and all of that, if you see somebody wearing that now, it's generally considered a little gauche. You know, Ovadia Yosef, I think, was the last person who was able to wear that without looking almost comical. Because this is what we dress. The Torah is dressed like the Kohen Gadol, precisely. and with the crown is like the king. And that is not just a metaphor. It is a deliberate attempt by our tradition to focus the attention on something that would never betray you, would never be corruptible, that would never lead you into any form of autocracy, dictatorship, or tyranny. We transferred all of our aspirations for human leadership into something that would never let us down. And we dressed it appropriately. I don't need a king, I've got the Torah. I don't need some Kohen Gadol to order me about and tell me how to perform my worship. I've got the Torah. And yes, we have second-tier leaders, non-hereditary leaders. We've got rabbis, and we have the machers of the community, and we have the volunteers, and they dress, like schlemiels compared to the Torah. And we get on with our job, and if we don't do a good job, we're out. We don't worry about whether the son of this leader is going to be as good as the father. That doesn't matter, because as long as we keep having the son of the Torah, a copy of a copy of a copy, we're good. And we keep our attention and focus on the Torah as being that core, that essence, that which is eternal and dependable. And everyone else in the middle management department, myself included, is expendable and constantly up for job review. And it is brilliant that our people did that, because it means that we remove the pathologies that come from hereditary power. All of the statements that we see throughout the Tanakh criticize the Kohanim for failing in their hereditary duties, and criticize the kings even more for failing in their hereditary duties. A good father can lead to a terrible successor, and a terrible king can sometimes have a righteous son. It is a roll of the dice, and the dice seem weighted to usually end up on the bad side. And so we found out it's better to dream of a righteous king called the Mashiach, to dream of a restoration of the temples and the Kohanim during the Messianic age, and to do nothing to bring those two about as political or religious leaders in the meantime. It is genius, and you didn't even notice that it was happening. Which means you probably also didn't notice the sleight of hand that comes, the most brilliant aspect of all, from making the Torah both Kohen Gadol as well as our Melech, which is the Torah can't actually perform those jobs on its own. The Torah is mute. The Torah is unliving in the literal sense of the terms. It has no hands, it has no feet, has no eyes, has no mouth. You have to perform those roles, which means you are ultimately now the seat of royalty, the seat of the Kohanut, the role of being a Kohen. You are the king, you are the priest. But of course, all of us are the king and all of us are the priest, which means that all of us have to actually work together and agree. By giving all of us equal authority, by vesting all of the authority in the Torah, which can only be expressed through all of us, Judaism has brilliantly defanged so many of the potential problems for a culture and society. And it has also brilliantly thrown onto your shoulders a burden that you would never have had you lived 3,000 years ago. But a burden that ennobles and inspires us when we are given it. Because each one of us can live up to the ideal of being a true king, to somebody that serves their nation and serves God by bringing the words of Torah into the practical matters of the world. And each of us can live up to the ideal of being a Kohen Gadol, of being a true priest, a descendant of Aaron, bringing peace to each other and bringing the ideals of Torah's spirituality into the world. And each of us believe we have that responsibility now, whereas in the ancient world, so much of that responsibility had been offloaded into those hereditary pockets. If you want to know why Judaism has survived, it is because we have done that. Because of this sleight of hand magic trip substitution, making each person feel that they are responsible for the people, that they are responsible for bringing Torah into the world and defending it against all attacks. Judaism mobilized the nation against any possible degradation of our strength and of our faith. Which means all that is left is to live up to it, to recognize that that is your role, that is your power, that is your authority, that is your responsibility, and to act as a proper Jewish king, to act as a proper Jewish Kohen Gadol. The Torah is waiting for you to take it and carry it into the world in that capacity. Go forth. Shabbat Shalom.